everybody. Hello, hello, hello. This is Attorney Augustus Corbett. We just had a little technical difficulty, but I believe I got it figured out, and here I am. I just have a short update that I want to do about the George Floyd murder case. We heard today, and we were happy to hear. I'm going to explain myself in just a moment. But we understand today that AG Keith Ellison for the state of Minnesota has updated and upgraded the charges that are against Derek Chauvin. Also, we learned that the other three officers were also charged with aiding and abetting second-degree murder. And my last video, I told you that that would be the likely charge for those three officers, aiding and abetting. So now that Mr. Chauvin is facing a second-degree murder charge, people are wondering exactly what is that? What is the second-degree murder charge? And so much of these charges hinge on whether the state feels like, whether Minnesota feels like it can prove intent. So that's been sort of the back and forth that I believe they were having, the prosecutors, as they were considering which charges were appropriate, or which ones they believed they could prove. So as it stands right now, as of today, Derek Michael Chauvin has been charged with second-degree murder, unintentional, while committing a felony. Second-degree murder, unintentional. You see, unintentional, while committing a felony. Now, I'm not a Minnesota lawyer. I'm licensed in Texas. I don't know the nuances of Minnesota law, but I've been doing this long enough that I'm confident that what I'm about to say is accurate, okay? What this sounds like to me, this second-degree murder, unintentional, while committing a felony, is what most jurisdictions call felony murder, okay? Now, we're going to stick with the nomenclature that Minnesota has given the statute, which is second-degree murder. But it sounds very similar to felony murder, okay? It sounds very similar to that. Now, also it increases the imprisonment up to 40 years, whereas the third degree carried a maximum of 25 years. So this increases what Mr. Chauvin could get up to 40 years. And here's what it says. Here's the actual charge description. That on or about May 25th, 2020, in Hennepin County, Minnesota, Derek Michael Chauvin caused the death of a human being, George Floyd, without intent to affect the death of any person, while committing or attempting to commit a felony offense other than criminal sexual conduct in the first or second degree with force or violence of a drive-by shooting, namely assault in the third degree. Now, before I explain that, let's read the statute. Minnesota statute, section 609.19, 19.2, section 609.19.2, subsection 1. And here's what it says. Whoever does unintentional murders, whoever does either of the following is guilty of unintentional murder in the second degree and may be sentenced to imprisonment for not more than 40 years. 1. Causes the death of a human being without intent to affect the death of any person while committing or attempting to commit a felony offense other than criminal sexual assault in the first or second degree with force or violence or by drive-by shooting. So that is the statute that they're using. Now, Minnesota has this second degree statute here that it's kind of different from a lot of other states. They can charge a person with second degree murder and say that he intended to commit the murder, okay? But then they also have subdivision 2 where they can charge somebody with second degree murder without having to prove that they intended to cause the death of the person. And they decided to charge Derek Chauvin and the other 3 officers with aiding and abetting that second degree murder statute. Because again, as I said in the first video that I did, they don't believe the evidence will sustain the intent element. So they have gotten around the intent element by bringing the second degree murder charge unintentional while committing a felony. So essentially what they're saying is that Derek Michael Chauvin caused the death of George Floyd without intending to affect the death of any person, but while committing or attempting to commit a felony, namely assault in the third degree. So they're saying that they have enough evidence to show, listen to me carefully, because this is what this statute is saying. Here's what Keith Ellison and the other prosecutors in Minnesota think that they have enough evidence to prove. They believe that they can prove that Derek Chauvin was intending to commit an assault against George Floyd. And in the commission of that assault, he unintentionally also caused the death of George Floyd. So they're saying that we can prove that he intended to commit the felony, the assault. They feel they have the evidence to prove that Derek Chauvin intended to assault George Floyd, but not enough evidence to prove that he intended to kill George Floyd, although George died in the commission of the assault. So again, that's very similar to felony murder, but they call it second degree murder, and it helps them avoid the problematic element of intent. Okay, so they still just don't think they have enough evidence to prove that he intended to kill George. They may believe he did. They may believe that he intended to kill George, but you got to have the evidence. You got to go where the facts lead you. You got to go where you think the evidence will prove it up. That's what prosecutors do, right? They're going to go where they think the evidence will sustain, a charge. And keep in mind, they're hesitant about the intent here because this is a police officer. At the end of the day, this is a white police officer. And if you do the research, you'll see that getting a conviction against a white police officer for killing a black man is very, very, very tough for all the reasons that we know. For the racism, the historical, systemic racism of how the police, were used in the slave patrols, hunting down black men, up to now all of the racism and bias that we see in law enforcement, and how much, the average white person will give a police officer the benefit of the doubt, especially in a situation like this, where there is a black victim, a black male victim, who the defense is going to say who was resisting arrest, who they're going to try to impeach his character, which is completely wrong, totally wrong. I'm hearing stuff that's floating out there about Mr. Floyd's character. It is irrelevant. It is totally irrelevant, 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 because none of that has anything to do with the fact that this man took his knee and choked the life out of Mr. Floyd, as Mr. Floyd laid on that pavement, restrained, hands behind his back, begging for his life. Okay, so but they're going to try to do it, and anything a lot of the white people will hear to help them justify this murder. Sadly and unfortunately, the record tells us they will use it. Okay. So for those reasons and others, Keith Ellison, and he is an African-American attorney general who was in Congress for a while. A lot of the civil rights folks wanted him handling this case. They didn't have a lot of trust in the Hennepin County attorney. So they wanted Keith. So they got their man, and Keith delivered with an upgraded charge. The question, though, is whether or not he'll be able to get a conviction. This is a tough case. I'm telling you now, this is a police officer who is going to get every benefit of the doubt that you can imagine for killing this black man who allegedly was involved in criminal activity. It's alleged. I haven't seen any proof of that. A call was made saying that he was trying to pass a counterfeit $20 bill, but I haven't seen any proof that he did. And even if he did do it, I don't care if he tried to pass a counterfeit $100 bill or $500 bill, if there's such a thing. What happened out there that day on the street, choking that man's life out like that, was completely, totally, absolutely wrong and immoral and racist. Point blank. All right, but that's what the second-degree murder charge means in a nutshell. Simply says that it simply means that they believe the evidence shows that Derek Chauvin intended to assault George Floyd, and in the process of committing that assault, George died. Okay, that's what it means. Carries up to 40 years. All right, whether he gets convicted or whether he gets the 40 years, we don't know. And by the way, the other charges remain. Let me get a drink of water. He's still facing the third-degree murder charge, and he's also still facing the manslaughter. So there are actually three charges. This second-degree charge didn't replace any of the other charges. It's in addition to these other charges. So he could conceivably get 40 years on the second-degree murder charge. He could also then get up to 25 years on the third-degree murder charge, and then he could conceivably get up to 10 years on the manslaughter charge for a total of 75 years. I don't know that would happen. And I know here in the state of Texas, if someone has multiple charges like this, whatever time they get on each charge can be concurrent or consecutive. If it's consecutive, if the judge says consecutive, he does one, then he has to do the other, then he has to do the other. If it's concurrent, then that means then that he can do it all at one time. So there are a whole lot of factors here still to be determined. But that's what second-degree murder is. And very quickly, with respect to the other police officers, I think they were charged with aiding and abetting the same charge, second-degree murder, unintentional while committing a felony. So all that means is you didn't see their knee in George's neck like Derek Chauvin, but they aided it. They assisted Derek in this thing. They conspired. They did it all together. Okay, so then that means they can be found guilty for the very same thing in essence. Okay, it's like, they're being charged with the same thing. So they too could get up to 40 years if it works the way it does here in Texas. Again, this is Minnesota. I don't practice there. I don't know the nuances of Minnesota law. All right. So I just wanted to give you that quick update, and I hope that answered some of your questions. If you have any questions, shoot them to me. I'll be happy to answer them. If you want to email them to me, or if you want to message me, inbox me the questions, that'll be fine as well. But I hope this update helped. Continue the protests while celebrating the progress. So keep it going, keep pushing. We're making some progress, although I believe strongly the real progress is going to come at the ballot box. Okay, the sustained progress. So as much as I see folks out there pushing and protesting, I want to see that same energy come November to get this crowd of people hopefully out of office. And not just Trump, but the senators, the Congress people, all of them. They need to go. They have created a horrible climate in this country and have set us back. They've set us back with respect to race relations. We need to get rid of Donald Trump. So with the same energy that we see these young folks out there protesting, we need to hit the ballot box in about 5 or 6 months. That's the end. Thank you. Have a good one.